Hi all, this is Skate, and today I'm going to make a video about the T34-1. Now I don't think it's a bad tank, but I didn't exactly enjoy this one too much. It's got a stunning gun, and I do mean the gun is stunning. It packs more alpha than any of the other mediums. For a medium tank at tier 7, it has a very respectable 175mm of penetration. But with a rammer, it has subpar DPM, 2145. But it's not the end of the world in terms of DPM. It's not actually that bad. In the videos you'll see, I will only have 3 equipment slots unlocked because I have recently finished grinding this tank because I was doing the IS2, so I thought, what the hell, I'll go get these Chinese mediums at the same time. So I'm going up both lines at the same time. And in terms of equipment, I'm not keeping the tank. So I've got a rammer on this. I have the equipment which helps your modules, ammo rack, etc. I can't remember what it's called right now. And the coated optics. So I've done that to try and improve the gameplay on it. You could go all the way with equipment, but unless you intend on keeping this tank, not really a great deal of points. As a personal preference, like I said, I've just finished grinding it. I don't intend on keeping this one. Now this has had some fair few glowing reviews by a fair amount of players. It's a good tank for them. Personal preference, I just didn't really enjoy this one too much. I didn't perform shockingly bad in it. That's not what it is. The gun, like I said, it's absolutely stunning, but aside from the gun, I found the tank to be lackluster, disappointing, just unexciting in terms of gameplay. I don't know, I genuinely found this tank frustrating, and I just didn't really enjoy it too much. I was glad to finish the grind, put it that way. I went from a stock grind on this one as I do with all my tanks, although a lot of people seem to think I don't. I don't know why. But no, I always go from 75%, and most of the time, in fact nearly all the time, I run the stock gun and engine and so on and so forth. But even when you are fully upgraded, the hull on this thing, the mobility, if we're going to talk about that first, it's not the greatest, really. In fact, before I go on about that, for the next video, I think I will make a point of doing it at the start of my grinds, because some people struggle like hell with the grind and want to know modules, etc. as well. So I'll try that on the next one. I think it'll be obviously T34-2 or the beautiful WZ-110, which I really like, by the way. But yeah, mobility. Now, in terms of acceleration, top speed on it, absolutely fine. Haven't got a concern with the top speed. Acceleration, well, pants is probably the word I'd use for a medium tank. Especially a medium tank which is as squishy as this thing is on the hull. And squishy is probably the best word I would use to describe the hull on this thing. I mean, you've got 40 on the rear, 45 on the side, and 60 on the front. In other words, your hull armor is absolutely abysmal, and pretty much everything which shoots at your hull is going to penetrate you. So you can see what I'm trying to do in the circumstance in this replay right now is do everything I can just to poke the hull. And that is exactly what you need to do with this tank if there's things with big guns which could point at you. For example, that Borsig could penetrate my hull at any angle pretty much with HE. Which, not the end of the world. You've got things like an SP1C, M41 Walker Bulldog. There's tons of things which you could penetrate medium or light tank wise at tier 7 frontally with something like a Borsig and HE. But they have better mobility for the armor they carry. And I think that's what my biggest frustration with this tank was, is the mobility for something with the armor layout this thing has on the hull isn't really the greatest. I mean, compare it to the Dragon, the light tank. Enough said in terms of hull armor and mobility. What you're paying for on this thing is basically a nice strong turret. You're going, well, we're going to give it a really nice strong turret, and we're sacrificing quite a bit for it. But although the turret is very, very good, and you want to try and just expose only the turret when you're playing this thing, which hopefully this game has been a nice example of so far, your turret frontally is only 170, so dealing with tier 6s, fine. Dealing with tier 7s, depending on what you're dealing with, can be touch and go. Dealing with tier 8s, well, that can also be a bit risky with the turret on this thing. The reality is the turret, although it's very good, is not infallible to the players which you are playing against and the tanks which you're playing against. But don't be alarmed. Worst case scenario, if they do manage to penetrate you and go through, well, your driver will save your tank for you by headbutting the shell. Because your driver seems to have a tendency of wanting to die. I don't know why, but my experience so far with this is my driver likes to die. And if he doesn't take the hit on the noggin, well, my ammo rack takes it instead. So, that's something to take into consideration in terms of when you're using your consumables. Make sure you don't use your multi-restoration pack. Only use your single when your tracks are down, because you could take one hell of a hit. And then you're stuck with a very, very delicate ammo rack, which has already received damage. Or you ended up with a knocked out driver and you can't recover him. I've probably made the mobility sound much worse than it actually is. I mean, you can see it on the screen. There's worse things out there with mobility, put it that way. There's worse medium tanks out there with worse mobility. However, you tend to find those ones would have better armor layouts, or a more reliable armor layout potentially. What you've got to do with this thing, especially if you're meeting equal tier tanks or tanks which are a lower tier, is quite simply hide your hull at all costs. Well, it doesn't matter what tier you come against. Hide your hull at all costs. You've got 6 degrees of gun depression with this gun, which is quite nice. And you don't really want to brawl. If you can avoid brawling in this, you're going to do fine. Because once you've got this top gun unlocked, you can start to enjoy that trading with other mediums and packing a bigger punch than what they can pack. So you're in an environment there where you're popping out and you're trying to take shot for shot. If they get a 160 alpha shot on you, no worries, you've just planted in a 300 shot on them potentially. And you'll see every time what I'm trying to do, I've now backed up and I'm trying to use the terrain to hide my hull at all costs. You've got that 6 degrees of gun depression with this gun. And the gun, as I've already mentioned, is very nice. But that, to me, is the only lovely quality of this tank. And I think so far I've sounded a lot more negative on this than I usually do on my normal tank videos. Hopefully that hits home the point I'm trying to get at, is try and hide the hull as much as you can. If you can't hide the hull and you... There goes my driver! I've just repaired him now, okay? Pay attention. Honestly, the driver, he's an idiot. Yeah, I will try and do everything I can, like this sort of scenario, hiding the hull in every circumstance I can. If I can see I'm being pushed, I will back it up to a point where my hull is hidden again. If you are exposed, you need to try and work from what tank you are exposed against, how to deal with it. If it's something like a Tiger II, park flat on its side and wiggle back and forth. They don't have the gun depression to shoot your hull. In other words, they're going to be trying to shoot the hatches on top of your tank. So tall things, or things with poor gun depression, you can get in close. However, ideally, the best circumstance would be hiding that hull. So yeah, potentially, there goes my ammo rack, by the way. I've repaired my driver once in this battle, and there went my ammo rack. So I've repaired a driver, repaired our ammo rack. You can pretty much guarantee my driver wants to kill himself again. But like I said earlier, if he didn't headbutt that shell, it would have been the ammo rack instead. And this is probably what I hated about this tank more than anything, is the ridiculously delicate modules. And it's those two in particular. Now, up against that T34 then, when you're up close, it was kind of an example of what I was giving earlier. I got stupidly lucky there. I got really lucky. Yeah, it was a nice example of what I was saying earlier. When you're up close with something, they don't have the gun depression to address you. So you can wiggle back and forth and hopefully they won't tap in those weak spots. So that is a viable solution. However, remember your DPM against other medium tanks isn't the greatest. And your armor isn't the greatest. So if they do manage to squeeze you off or use their better mobility to their advantage, you're going to suffer quite quickly. So if you can keep a little bit of range and keep your hull hidden, that is the optimal circumstance for this tank. Now, bit of a spoiler on this game very, very quickly. They do have an AFK, which I do manage to get some harvesting shots in at the end. And I hate including mastery games with an AFK, and I actually try to avoid it. However, I'm including this one, and I'm not going to tell you the reason why until a bit later on in the gameplay. But I think it's balanced, let's put it that way. I think the fact they have an AFK balances out in terms of the gameplay. Which is probably already unfolding on the mini-map. But, gameplay. If you look at the scenario I'm in, I'm trying my best to just poke my turret. STA1 pushes on me, which means I'm getting into cover. I'm not playing the DPM game against an STA1. Now, if he popped this corner and started playing that game against me, I would be in a lot of trouble very quickly. However, he's just given me the advantage back. He's just popped back down the ridge. Now, he does have good gun depression, but his turret is not as good as mine. So as soon as he is in that circumstance, he has my turret to shoot at, which is, as I said, it's 170. It's not epically amazing, but it's very, very good. And in theory, I can get shots like that on him, and I don't have to worry too much about him. Unless he loads premium ammo, and as soon as he starts loading premium ammo, I don't think my turret will stand up to that. However, it's worth the risk, it's worth the gamble, because you'd rather try and gamble a shot on your turret than you would on your hull. Your hull's not going to take it, guaranteed. I'd say you've got an 80% chance of taking the shot on your turret. And like I said, at the very start, just to reconfirm, a lot of people have said this is a fantastic tank, and I'm not taking that away from the thing. It's just my personal experience. I didn't really enjoy the tank too much. And I've probably made it sound worse than it is. However, if you've come here to this video looking for tips on how to play the thing, hopefully what's going to stick in your head more than anything is that hull. Because it is bad. But hopefully that'll stick in someone's head at least, and then if so, well, this video is useful at that point. Because I tell you what, if you haven't played this tank yet and you watch this video first, what are you going to do? Is just go hide that hull, because you don't want to kill your ammo rack or your driver. Now, I would like to draw your attention to the minimap, because I pointed out the minimap earlier on, and you guessed it, the tanks I point out at that exact point in time earlier are the same tanks which have not moved from exactly the same position. So they have an AFK. And I have two in base. They've done something, but in terms of trading DPM down at this point, in terms of trading hit points, taking shots, guns pointing at guns, there's two down in the base. And I really could have done with their help at this point, because I'm, again, dealing with a higher tier tank, which could really cause some pain on me. However, he's just missed his shot, and I know I have the advantage, even though he has the gun depression as well. So that means, even though there is an AFK, which we're going to be a bit cheeky, and we're going to go harvest, because, well, it's only me out of the spawn. Yeah. Hopefully you can understand what I was saying earlier by I don't mind including this one with one of their AFKs in. But all in all, the tank. If you can play it completely hull down, using the 6 degrees of gun depression, just poking the turret and trying to keep a bit of range so nothing with better DPM comes in and assaults you out in the open, or pushes you out of your nice strong position, you'll do fine in this tank. As soon as something starts shooting into your hull, they're going to make an absolute mess of you and out DPM you. That's where another frustration is with this tank, is if you are pushed out of your stronghold, you've gone from being a tough little target to being really easy to address and deal with. Just spam you with HE. Hopefully I've hit the message home about the stronghold and trying to keep this thing completely hull down. But yeah, aside from that, I hope you have enjoyed this video, guys. I'm quite behind on my videos. I've had a lot going on, so apologies for the sporadic content. However, I'm going to be smashing a load of them out over the next week, so hopefully there'll be a lot of content caught up on and lots of interesting videos for you guys to watch, including the Tortoise, the IS-7, the T34-2, WZ-110, and a couple of others thrown in there as well. And all of them, I can say, are a lot more positive. But still, bringing out the negatives doesn't necessarily mean I'm saying, this is a really bad tank. It's just saying it's just a situational tank. And that situation is, anything shoots at the top, you should be okay. Anything shoots a little bit down, you're screwed. That's pretty much the gist of what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I do think sometimes focusing more on the bad points of a tank rather than the good points of a tank really hit home how important it is to hide those bits. So I hope that message has been taken from this. And obviously combine that with that gun, which is stunning, and you should be okay. But that is it for now. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye bye.